When you stop being available for everything and everyone, something incredible happens. People start paying attention. They start noticing your absence. They start valuing the energy they used to take for granted. Because the truth is, the more available you are, the less people appreciate you. And the moment you pull your energy back, not out of anger, not out of games, but out of self-respect, everything changes. Your relationships shift, your confidence rises, and the world finally learns how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself. When you stop being available for everything and everyone, something shifts, not just in them, but in you. People don't realize how much they rely on your presence until that presence isn't guaranteed anymore. And it's not because you're trying to teach them a lesson or because you're pulling away out of anger. It's because you finally understand that your time, your energy, your attention, those things are not unlimited, they're not free, and when you stop handing them out like they are, people start noticing. They start thinking, they start respecting what they used to overlook. You've probably noticed this in your own life. When you were always available, always ready to help, always picking up the phone on the first ring, always saying yes even when you were exhausted, people got used to it. They got comfortable with the idea that you were a constant. And human nature does something strange with constants. It stops seeing them. It starts assuming they'll always be there, no matter how they're treated. But the second you pull a little of that access back, when you create even the smallest bit of space, suddenly people wake up. Suddenly that presence they took for granted becomes valuable again. And the truth is, it's not even about them. It's about you finally deciding that you're no longer going to be available at the cost of your own peace. It's about realizing that you don't need to show up for everyone just because they expect you to. You don't have to rush in every time someone snaps their fingers. You don't owe the world constant access to you. And the moment you accept that, everything changes. Because when you step back, even slightly, people start choosing their words more carefully. They start treating your time differently. They start thinking before they ask for your energy. They stop assuming you'll drop everything to solve their problems. They start valuing the moments you do give them because those moments aren't automatic anymore. They're intentional, they're earned, they matter, and maybe for the first time, you'll see which people actually respect you. You'll see who reaches out because they value you, not just what you do for them. You'll see who checks in, who puts in effort, who doesn't get upset or offended when you're not instantly available. Because healthy people don't demand unlimited access to your life. Healthy people understand boundaries. They understand that a no or a not right now doesn't mean rejection. It means you're human and you're protecting your well-being. But there's another layer to this. When you stop being constantly available, you start valuing yourself more deeply. You stop watering dead plants. You stop entertaining chaos. You stop letting people drain you without giving anything back. You start recognizing your own worth, not because someone else finally sees it, but because you finally do. You notice that your thoughts are calmer, your heart is quieter, your decisions are clearer, and you realize that maybe the problem wasn't that people were taking too much. Maybe the problem was that you were giving too freely. When you create distance, even a little, people respond. Some pull away because they were only there for what you provided, but others step closer because they were there for you, and that's where the shift happens. That's when you start seeing the difference between those who appreciated your presence and those who simply consumed it. Everything changes when you stop being the person who is always available, always reachable, always giving, always accommodating. Because the moment you choose yourself, the world starts choosing how to treat you more carefully, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back. Most people don't realize how much of their stress, their frustration, even their heartbreak comes from one simple thing. They never learned how to set boundaries, not because they didn't want to, but because they were afraid of the reaction. Afraid of disappointing someone, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid that saying no might push someone away. So they kept saying yes, yes to conversations they didn't want to have, yes to favors they didn't have the time or energy for, yes to people who never stopped to ask whether they were okay. And over time, that constant availability didn't make their relationships healthier. It made them heavier. But here's the shift that happens when you finally draw a line. When you tell someone, I can't do that right now, or I'm not comfortable with that, or I need space, you're not building a wall, you're building a door that only opens with respect, a door that says, you can come into my life, but not on your terms, on ours. And the moment you start protecting your time like that, people begin to pay attention. They notice the difference. They feel the difference. Because you're no longer someone they can walk into whenever it's convenient. You're someone they now have to approach with intention. What's powerful is how boundaries reveal the reality of your relationships. People who genuinely care about you don't get offended when you need space. They don't punish you for choosing rest. They don't guilt trip you for not being immediately available. They adjust. They respect it. They understand. But the ones who relied on you having no boundaries, those are the ones who get upset. Those are the ones who suddenly act distant, irritated, or confused. And that reveals more about them than it ever will about you. Because the truth is, being overly available is not kindness. It's self-abandonment. It's giving away your energy before giving yourself the chance to check if you have enough. It's letting people take from you because you don't want to look selfish. But boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are self-respect in action. Boundaries say, I matter too. Boundaries say, my peace is important. Boundaries say, I can love you deeply, but I won't lose myself to do it. And the moment you start speaking that language, the world responds differently. Not immediately and not always smoothly, but it responds. You stop hearing from the people who only needed you when they were lonely. You stop being the emotional dumping ground for people who never cared how you felt afterward. You stop being the person who holds everything together while no one checks if you're falling apart. The people who remain in your life are the ones who want to be there, not because of what you provide, but because of who you are. What's even more important is the internal shift. When you set boundaries, you start feeling lighter. You're no longer stretching yourself thin to keep everyone else comfortable. You're no longer saying yes while your heart is screaming no. You're no longer betraying your own needs for the sake of someone else's expectations. And that kind of alignment, where your words, your actions, and your self-worth all match, creates a peace that you can feel in your chest. You start to trust yourself more. You start to listen to your own signals. You start to realize that you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to say no without explaining yourself to anyone. You are allowed to protect your own life without apologizing for it. And that's the beauty of boundaries. They don't push the right people away. They push the wrong ones out. One of the most eye-opening things that happens when you stop being constantly available is that people start revealing themselves without even realizing it. You don't have to call anyone out. You don't have to confront them. All you have to do is take a small step back, pull your energy in just a little, and suddenly the truth comes out. Because when you're always there, always reachable, always ready to help, some people start treating your effort like a vending machine. They press a button, you show up. But the moment that button stops working, even for a moment, you get to see who actually valued you and who only valued what you provided. It's almost uncomfortable at first, that silence that follows when you don't respond right away. That space you create when you don't rush to fix something for someone. That pause where your instinct is to jump in, but you hold yourself back. And in that pause, people reveal everything. The ones who are using you for convenience get upset. They get distant. They act like you changed just because you didn't drop everything for them. They make you feel like you're doing something wrong for taking care of yourself. But the truth is, you didn't change. You just stopped allowing them to take advantage of your availability. And what's interesting is how quickly they show their true intentions. The moment you're not a source of comfort, attention, validation, or favors, they disappear. They don't check in. They don't ask if you're okay. They don't wonder why you pulled back. They just leave because their connection to you was never about you. It was about access to what you could do for them. And as painful as that can be, it's one of the greatest clarities you will ever receive. But then there are the others, the ones who don't get offended when you need space, the ones who don't take it personally when you're not instantly available. These are the people who value you, not your availability. They're patient, they're understanding, they ask if everything's all right instead of assuming the worst. They respect your boundaries because they respect you. And these are the people who remain when the noise fades. These are the people who show consistency, not convenience. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to explain yourself to them. They meet you where you are. This is why stepping back is so powerful. It acts like a filter. It removes the people who are draining you while allowing the right ones to naturally rise. You stop wasting energy on people who only come around when it's beneficial for them. You stop giving emotional CPR to relationships that were dead long before you realized it. You stop pouring into people who never poured anything back. And in doing that, your life becomes clearer. Your relationships become simpler. Your heart becomes lighter. You start to see patterns you used to ignore. The friend who only reaches out when they need something, the partner who only puts effort in when they feel threatened, the family member who only shows love when you're fulfilling their expectations. All those dynamics show up clearly when you stop being endlessly available, and instead of feeling guilty for pulling back, you begin to feel grateful, because you now understand who deserves your presence and who doesn't. This shift isn't about punishing anyone or proving anything. It's about finally allowing honesty to surface. When you stop overextending yourself, people show you exactly where they stand, and that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, frees you. And the beautiful part is, once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. There's something powerful that happens when you stop giving everyone unlimited access to you. You finally start giving some of that access back to yourself. When you stop rushing to be everywhere, do everything, solve every issue, respond to every message the moment it comes in, you create this space inside yourself that you probably didn't even realize was missing. And in that space, your confidence begins to grow in a way it couldn't before, not because someone is validating you, not because someone is praising you, but because, for the first time in a long time, you're choosing you. Most people don't understand how deeply constant availability chips away at their sense of self. You spend so much time showing up for others that you forget how to show up for yourself. You forget what your own needs sound like. You forget what rest feels like. You forget that you're allowed to pause without asking for permission. And the moment you stop overextending yourself, your mind becomes quieter. Your thoughts become clearer. You start noticing what you actually want instead of reacting to what everyone else wants from you. This is where confidence starts to rebuild itself, not in loud, dramatic ways, but in quiet, steady steps. You start trusting yourself again. You start listening to your intuition instead of ignoring it to keep someone else comfortable. You start recognizing what drains you, what lifts you, and what you've been tolerating for far too long. And little by little, you begin to realize that your availability isn't the glue that holds your value together. Your value exists even when you step back. It doesn't shrink when you rest. It doesn't disappear when you say no. If anything, it becomes more visible. Because when you're not constantly running after everything, you finally have the energy to evaluate what's worth running toward. You begin to see which relationships are healthy and which ones are held together only by your effort. You start understanding that you don't need to earn connection through overgiving. You don't need to prove your worth through exhaustion. You don't have to be everything to everyone just to feel needed. And the more you choose yourself, the more confident you become in choosing wisely. Confidence isn't just about speaking boldly or walking tall. Confidence is also the quiet moment when you take a breath and remind yourself, I am enough even when I'm not available. It's the decision to protect your peace without apologizing. It's the understanding that self-respect is not the same as selfishness. There's also a shift in how you carry yourself. You stop chasing after validation. You stop looking for other people's approval before making decisions. You stop giving your power away every time someone wants something from you. And when you no longer rely on others to tell you who you are, you step into a version of yourself that feels grounded, steady, whole. People feel that shift. They respond to it. Some admire it, some adjust to it, and some can't handle it. But that's not your burden to carry. The more you pull back from overextending, the more energy you have for your goals, your healing, your passions, your growth. You start building a life that reflects what matters to you instead of what everyone else wants from you. You begin to realize that your confidence is not something you find, it's something you protect. And when you stop being constantly available, you finally have the space to protect it. And that's when you understand the truth. Choosing yourself was the confidence you were missing all along. When you stop being constantly available, one of the first things you notice isn't dramatic or loud. It's quiet, almost too quiet at first. Your phone stops buzzing as much. The constant pull on your attention slows down. There's this unfamiliar silence that fills the spaces where people used to demand something from you. And because you've been so used to noise, messages, responsibilities, emotional weight, you might mistake that silence for loneliness. But stay with it long enough, and you'll realize something important. That silence isn't emptiness, it's peace. It's the kind of peace you didn't even know you were missing because you were too busy responding to everything happening outside of you. Life becomes calmer when you're not trying to manage the emotions of everyone around you. You stop feeling like you're living in reaction mode, always putting out fires, handling problems that aren't yours, or trying to keep the peace in situations you didn't create. Suddenly, you have room to breathe, room to think, room to exist without carrying the weight of other people's expectations on your shoulders. And it's in that quiet, peaceful space that you start hearing yourself again. Your thoughts, your feelings, your needs. Things you pushed to the background because you were too busy showing up for everyone else. You begin to understand how much of your stress came from being too accessible, too open, too available. People came to you because they knew you'd always respond, always help, always pick up the slack. But now, with that automatic availability gone, the noise around you settles, and what's left behind is clarity. Clarity about who really cares for you, and who was just passing through your life when they needed something. Peace doesn't mean everything in your life becomes perfect. It doesn't mean problems disappear. It simply means you're no longer engaging in chaos you don't belong in. You're not overthinking every message. You're not trying to decode someone's behavior. You're not draining yourself emotionally just to maintain a connection that barely gives anything back. You're not sacrificing your mental well-being to keep someone else comfortable. And in that shift, your entire world feels lighter. With more peace comes more presence. You start noticing details you used to skim over because your mind was always somewhere else. You enjoy moments instead of rushing through them. You connect with people who don't demand all of your energy. You give yourself permission to rest without guilt. And rest, real rest, feels different when it's not interrupted by people who expect you to drop everything for them. And the quieter your life gets, the more you start to understand the difference between being needed and being respected. Being constantly needed can look like value, but it's actually pressure. Being respected means people don't feel entitled to your time. They don't assume you'll always be there. They don't expect you to sacrifice yourself for their convenience. They appreciate you instead of depending on you for their emotional oxygen. This is the part of the journey where your energy shifts. You become harder to manipulate, harder to drain, harder to take advantage of, not because you build walls, but because you've learned to protect your peace, and that protection changes everything. You no longer give pieces of yourself away to people who haven't earned them. You stop feeding chaos with your attention. You stop participating in situations that leave you mentally exhausted. And the beautiful thing is, the quieter your life becomes, the more your soul recognizes what peace actually feels like. There comes a moment, after you stop overextending yourself, when you finally begin to see who truly belongs in your life. Not the people who benefited from your constant availability, not the ones who showed up only when they needed something, but the ones who actually care about you. And you start noticing something surprising. The right people don't get pushed away when you stop doing everything. They step up. They meet you where you are instead of demanding you return to where you used to be. When you stop stretching yourself thin, the people who value you don't panic. They don't guilt trip you. They don't make you feel like you're doing something wrong. Instead, they adjust. They add effort where they used to rely on yours. They initiate conversations instead of waiting for you to do it. They check on you without needing a reason. They don't see your boundaries as a threat. They see them as a sign of growth, and the right people grow with you. It's almost eye-opening how naturally this shift reveals the truth. You aren't chasing anyone anymore. You aren't forcing connections. You aren't overthinking someone's silence or trying to decode mixed signals. You're simply allowing things to be what they are, and in that space, real relationships start to show themselves. Not the uneven ones, not the one-sided ones, real ones. The ones where effort is mutual, where emotional labor is shared, where both people invest instead of one person carrying the entire weight. And what's beautiful is how your energy changes too. When you stop giving from an empty cup, you begin to see what healthy connection should actually feel like. It shouldn't feel like pressure. It shouldn't feel like anxiety. It shouldn't feel like you're one mistake away from losing someone. The right people don't operate like that. They create safety, not stress. They bring clarity, not confusion. They match your presence instead of consuming it. You'll notice it in small moments. The friend who reaches out even when you've been quiet. The partner who puts in effort without waiting for you to ask. The family member who respects your boundaries instead of arguing with them. These are the people who stay not because you're constantly available, but because they genuinely want to be in your life. They don't need you at 24/7 availability to feel connected to you. They need honesty, respect, and effort, and they give those things back. What's powerful is how this shift changes your standards. You stop entertaining people who only show up when it's convenient. You stop accepting breadcrumb effort. You stop settling for connections that drain you instead of building you. And you start to understand that the right people don't need you to shrink yourself to keep them. They don't need you to sacrifice your well-being to maintain the relationship. They're not threatened by your growth. They're inspired by it. And this is when everything around you begins to align. The more you value yourself, the more your circle naturally aligns with that value. The more you pull back from people who drain you, the more room you create for those who truly appreciate you. The more you choose your peace, the more you attract people who protect it with you. And when the right people step forward, you no longer question whether you're asking for too much. You finally understand that you are asking the wrong people, because when you stop being overavailable, you stop carrying relationships alone, and the right people will always meet you halfway.